This is House Education, March 20th, 2025. For the next 50 minutes, we're here having committee discussion on our continued work, but just sort of some housekeeping. Until we pass out a bill, please have it be, unless you hear otherwise, we're due back in the room 10 minutes after the floor, even if it's 4:30.
Unless you send us a text.
Unless Annie or I send a text saying, no, we won't be meeting, which is more likely than not if it's going to be after 4:30.
But just always come back.
Just always come back promptly.
Yep.
Today on the floor, I will be presenting the miscellaneous education bill. So we'll have hope for good things from that. That will, just so you know, it's going to be, I'll present the bill, then Representative Boughton will present his amendment, and then I will present our discussion, testimony that we heard, and our vote. And then the full House will vote on the amendment. There may be some questions that go on back and forth. So that will be that process. And then I thought I would talk a little bit about 454, what we're doing. Because we are sort of moving on a different pace of things by putting the districting off and, while somebody else does it and we come back and create it. The wording of our strike all amendment what we really want to be very clear about and put in place is the intention of what's going to happen in the future. We can't legislate. You can't say, and in 2026 the legislature will.
Right.
It'll have to say, it'll be in the intent section. So we're going to need to spend time on the intent section. So it's going to say the subcommittee of the commission will draw lines, it will present to the legislature, and then the intent section will be along the lines that it is the intention of the General Assembly to decide new districts in 2026. It is the intent of the General Assembly to decide, school boards and sort of all the bits and pieces, and then flowing that out on the timeline that we agreed to within it. So, in a way, the bill will sort of look like it's a lot of intent, but that's just because that's the process. I think maybe just as we have Casey out and Kate out, and Aaron's running late, and Chris has to leave in a bit. I think we'll review sort of the language we put together yesterday as a refresher. We'll have Legislative Council walk us through it, open it up to a little bit more discussion. Period. But we have a little bit of the clock is ticking. I am wondering, thinking, because I feel good about us being able to move forward. We just have a time crunch because we're on the floor a lot. We've got things like judicial retention. So if everybody could just sort of text me like, hey, Peter, if you were to force us to come in on Monday, here are my limitations. And those limitations might be, just text me them, might be, I can't come in on Monday. I just want to do an inventory.
Can I get it to you this evening?
Yeah.
And do you want it just to you or to our group one that we already have?
We just need to plug up everybody's.
Just yours, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
So sort of between now and basically whatever end of session looks like, any Mondays? Or
just
this
the
is to
next
get.
couple.
Oh, you mean in the next couple weeks? Oh, okay.
No,
Yeah.
next Monday.
Our deadline
Right.
is Friday.
Right.
So
I'm
I'm
forgetting.
talking about this one.
So just this coming Monday.
Not permanently.
No.
Oh, okay.
Just once. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you as well. I have to look at my
There won't be
calendar.
another Monday later in the session.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that. We're not going to be on the floor.
What was the?
Well, we're going to be recording, so it's...
I think appropriate dress will be fine, but I'm not sure you have to wear a tie. I think coming
Doesn't
out on
have to
Monday,
be.
we can relax a little bit.
I'll be coming out of the basement.
Okay.
Bring your height.
All right, and just, so here are among the pieces to be put into place, you know, finish up our work on the line drawing finish, I think we're doing okay. We have come up with a list, and I've sent it off to the secretary, things that I feel need to be in place before we move forward with line drawings, just basic things from the AOE. How do we move to standardized reporting for student information and for finances, and just basically saying to them, they need to come up with plans for these things. We have been big on concepts, but low on details, and we've really got to make sure the details are right. Yes.
Two questions that are coming up for me about this. One that is coming from my constituents, and maybe you're going to clarify this when we look at the language again in a few minutes. But does the language that we're giving to the commission make it so that they are not allowed to look at a supervisory union model?
We really have them drawing, we're calling them district lines.
Okay.
Now, then it comes back to us, and it will be up to us, once those lines are drawn, to, if we want to entertain the concept of some of these boundaries are going to be SUs and not SDs, we can have that conversation.
So that's not off the table yet.
I would not call it off the table. I mean,
Okay.
we've had significant testimony saying that the SU model has got its flaws and challenges, but
Yeah.
I would say it is not off the table.
Okay, I'm not advocating
Right.
for or against it, just trying to
No,
clarify.
and I will say, Leah, it's very
It's
good
not
point,
at
is
the
that,
table, it's not.
we're getting a lot of emails about it, and we will provide folks who are advocating for that an opportunity to testify.
Okay.
But it may not be this year, but it may be next year, because then we will be crafting what goes on inside those lines.
That's helpful.
That's helpful,
Yeah.
thank you.
And then my second question is about sort of the process, the big process as a whole. So now we're not gonna necessarily know how many districts until at least January 1st, well, probably after January 1st. But does that mean that, and sorry if this is really dumb, that the 5 is off the table, or could the governor still veto any plan and say, I'm only gonna sign a plan that's 5?
The governor, like the legislature, can do what the governor wants to do.
Okay, so we might not know for years what the bill is actually, or,
Right. I would just say that in all conversations, that the number of districts has always, no one's ever said, we are hard and fast on 5. We understand that there may be need to adjust that. I think the secretary has said that right in front of us.
okay. Okay,
I mean, they have their reasons for the 5, but they, I think, recognize that
okay.
that
But
compromise and
yeah.
thoughtful procedure is important as we go through this.
essentially, we won't be in this committee voting on 454 to pass on to the floor until next year.
No.
No,
We
we'll
will
have-
be
we'll
passing
have something.
out of this committee 454 in the version that we come up with on Friday.
Yeah.
Okay, but without a number of district lines.
We are.
I guess this is what
Yes, the answer to your question is yes,
Yeah.
we will be providing guidance to,
Okay, and
The
that will be in the
subcommittee.
bill. Got it. All right, sorry.
just as we provided guidance to Ways and Means.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, and so 454 will be sort of our work, and then folded into it, Ways and Means work, and potentially Commerce's work on CTE, and potentially, and we haven't even talked about school construction. We talked about it, but we haven't figured out folding it in.
Okay.
Was that?
That's our week.
Yeah.
But that's all. So
Some version of.
we need to sort of stay focused and yeah, get us moving. All right, so why don't we have legislative council join us, just walk us through to get us refamiliarized with the language we came up with yesterday.
Can I share a plug in, please? Thank you.
And that's our big plug still.
We need that big plug back.
He's the big plug. I try to keep up on it, but
And the language that we went through is on our committee
it's not like it's
page.
that cluttery.
I forgot to put on my name tag in my
Get the Kleenex off the speaker to make sure people can hear.
Yeah, you go ahead and share that.
Yes.
We probably don't.
That's on my shopping list,
Probably the same reason.
Oh.
Makes you true at the same time.
If I could, I had capacity to think about that right now. I would. So I'm gonna stack burn that one.
Yeah, part-time anyway.
All right, everybody, here we go.
That's St. James Office of Legislative Counsel. So I've made no changes to this language since we talked yesterday. So what are we doing?
Yeah, just sort of walk
Good
us
work, Beth.
through the underlined parts
Sure.
in general.
So remember, we are making amendments to the language that you all passed last year, creating the Commission on the Future of Public Education. I'm not going to keep reorienting you to what underlined, strike through, all of that means, but if you have questions, please speak up. So remember, we made the change, and again, this is policy, and I actually, as I think through this, I have some logistical questions that we can either talk about here or offline, but this draft, we're making everyone who's currently a member of the commission stay a member of the commission, and we are signifying that they are voting members. And then you are adding 5 non-voting members appointed on or before July 15th so they can get to work, all of whom shall have extensive experience working within the Vermont public education system. And the appointing authorities shall coordinate to ensure that, to the extent possible, each of the 5 non-voting members represent a different geographic region of the state. And then we have 2 members being appointed by the Speaker of the House, 1 who shall be a retired or former Vermont superintendent from an SU with multiple member districts, and 1 who shall be a retired or former Vermont school business manager. 2 members appointed by the Committee on Committees, 1 of whom shall be a retired or former Vermont superintendent, 1 of whom shall be retired or former school business manager, and 1 member appointed by the governor who shall be a retired or former Vermont superintendent. You want to keep going?
Does that language preclude people who are currently on the commission that fit any of those definitions?
That's an interesting question. I would say, as a practical matter, they would have to choose whether they wanted to be a voting member or a non-voting member, right? Or that could maybe not choose if. That's a practical consideration I think we have to think through that comes through to one of my other practical considerations of who is advancing or how much does the commission have any say in what this subcommittee is doing?
That's what I wanted to know.
I think is a practical consideration we haven't talked about. So depending on what you all choose.
So I thought about this exact same question as I look over at Jay, for example.
One of the 3 that would fit
who is both a retired or former superintendent and member of the commission. But for most of the categories on the commission, it's a person or it's an organization, a person or designee. So I think one could say, I really want to be part of the districting. I therefore will drop off the commission as a voting member, and there will be a new designee from my organization. I'm not sure.
without us taking any action for that to happen,
Yeah.
that can happen within commission?
Yeah.
Okay. I don't have a strong feeling either way, I'm just, there's.
Kate, then Emily?
As I was thinking about this last night, I think we're really limiting ourselves by not including current superintendents and financial officers. And I know that we talked about how would they even have time to do that work? But I also don't think that we should be the ones making that decision. And it's possible that we have some folks who are current now that by the time they could get appointed and whatever, maybe they're moving on and won't be there next fall, or I feel like we're limiting ourselves and the pool, really, frankly. That it's not a very big pool to begin with, and if you don't use all the current ones and you only use retired or former, then it might be too small to even find those 5 people.
I think one of the reasons that we had it as former is because the work they're doing is essentially eliminating their jobs. And I think there was a concern that there would be perceived, perhaps not a real, but a perceived conflict of interest in that area.
I agree with that statement.
I think last night I know that our school board in Washington Central was talking about, I wouldn't say potentially, they're talking about moving forward with possibly combining Montpelier and U32. And I think when they enter into those conversations, they're talking about possibly eliminating a job, but they still have those conversations because they're professionals and they understand the landscape and the future state of education.
Yeah, I think it's about perception more than reality. Emily?
So going back to the role, how they all fit in together, I hear what you were saying, but I still don't see the need to even separate that there's no role for the commission in a recommendation from this subcommittee we're setting up directly to the legislature. So if this group, this redistricting group, is that what we're calling it? Redistricting committee? If they are going through the commission, getting their approval first and coming to us, that's a different thing than just operating under the auspices and the supports around whatever the commission has and directly recommending to us. I think that changes the question that Representative Brady had, and whether a member of the commission could, because it's really just a difference between voting and non-voting. And if you were a member of both, you could be a non-voting member on the subcommittee, but still be a voting member, or maybe even stepping off for the time being while they're working on those couple of months. You see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying.
I'm not sure what the role of the commission is.
Twisting up in knots in a complicated way.
What I'm trying to say is that it's complicated right now because I don't know what the role of the commission is in this.
But it's just we haven't put any parameters around that. So let's talk about that issue then. I guess, sort of brainstorming here, I would say, I think we want this group to be as independent as possible. However, it does seem to me that they are working under the umbrella and in coordination with the public engagement effort of the commission. So it would seem to me that maybe the language could be that the work of the subcommittee is advanced to the legislature with an invitation for the full commission to not approve or disapprove of it in a formal way, but to provide commentary. I don't know how else to sort of put it in legal terms. Yeah,
But don't they have the ability to provide the commentary anyway without us putting that in the language?
sure.
So I don't know if that's
I think as long as we're
necessary.
putting in that they have to approve it.
Right, and I would not be a fan of that.
And we do have language that says that
Someone
they
to be
shall work
independent.
in coordination with the commission, right?
The language that we have, avert your eyes. The district boundary subcommittee shall engage and coordinate with the commission's public engagement subcommittee to maximize public input and feedback, but we don't have anything in here specific to their work with the commission in general.
Very bad.
And I also think they should be as independent as possible and not really be part of that commission. Again, not even perception as much as anything.
So if I'm not here, so we have to all coalesce around something here. So our do people want to keep as part of it that these need to be former superintendents and business managers, or do we want to open it up farther? I personally would say I think the professionalism of these folks is really beyond question, but this is so important. It really has to be. We have to avoid any perception of conflict. Again, that's my personal opinion.
I agree.
And are people comfortable in keeping it as sort of the way we have it, where the commission isn't voting yay or nay on the work of the line drawing commission, but they certainly always have the ability to work, and we just have them working together, working in coordination with the public engagement of the full commission.
And I think the full commission might like have also a role of like making sure that the subcommittee is staying on task, right? Like check-ins to make sure they're meeting these pieces as they go, because it does help to have that.
So why don't do we need to put in something that
Complicates it.
requires, a report to the commission following each subcommittee meeting?
You don't have to put that in, but you certainly can.
I think it'd be worth having some sort of check-in.
You want a
Or require.
report back after
I
every
think that
meeting?
complicates it.
Micromanaging.
Yeah.
In my humble opinion.
Yeah.
So for me though,
Let's put,
then why have them coupled, right? They can get that information from the bigger committee.
With the reason to have them, there's another reason to have them coupled. Part of it's money.
Yeah.
The commission has a budget.
Okay.
Could it be something that's normal, like not a report, but just like
Regular.
some language or
Regular
like
updates.
updates?
That's all I was intending. I wasn't thinking of a slide deck and
Right.
all that.
They're on a tight timeline. I don't want to make their work more
And there is
administratively heavy.
already a subcommittee, well, there's several subcommittees, but I think the closest subcommittee you have to what you're contemplating here is the finance subcommittee. And they do provide there's always from my review of the minutes, you are a member, Chair Conlon, so you tell me if I have it wrong, but there's usually an update from the finance subcommittee. There's usually an update from all the subcommittees,
That's
so,
correct.
yeah.
But at the same time, that subcommittee was appointed from members of the committee by members of the committee, and this
They-
is slightly different.
Yes.
So I guess my question, I'm gonna pose something that I do not think will happen, but I just gonna say it because I wanna know what would happen if it did. What if the commission said, wait, we wanna have more input into this? Is that, we don't like the direction it's going, and we would like to have you come back to us anyway, you see what I'm saying?
Well, if
Is that
I could predict human
possible?
behavior to that extent, I would not be in this job. I would be somewhere else.
I'm
No,
not
I'm not
asking
trying to be
that.
flip. I'm just trying to
Well,
say
I'm
like,
actually literally not asking. I'm asking if the language covers if that.
what I'm trying to say is I don't think that no matter what you put in law, anytime, you cannot control the behavior of the humans out in the field executing the law. So I think that my legal opinion is that the commission should be operating within the black letter and plain meaning of the language. They only exist because you make them exist. And they should only be doing what you are asking them to do. So absent a specific directive to have a certain amount of input in the subcommittee's work, I would say that's not within their duties. They could feel that they want to have a liaison or something like that. And then I would say it would probably be up to the subcommittee to decide how much voice and access that's happening. It'll be a public body, right? So people can come, public comment periods and all of that. So I would say, unless you're putting a specific charge into the law that you are advancing that says, seat at the table, at every meeting, have a certain amount of input, sign off on whatever, then that's outside the scope of their duties. But we don't know what the humans at the table are gonna actually end up doing. Does that make sense?
It does make sense, and I'm not, I'm just trying to make sure that we're covering everything we can in the language we're putting forward here, to make sure that they are, as I think we are saying, we want an independent, very robust process in a very short time frame, and we're asking a lot, and I want to make sure that they're well resourced and tooled to do that.
If you want to specifically prohibit some act or behavior, that's where I think you should get prescriptive.
Okay. But we did agree in the beginning that we were going to do this under the auspices of the commission, so I think that's, I don't think we've changed on that, so,
Is there,
I'd
is
like
there language,
coordination.
is there some sort of prohibition language you might want to put in there?
Me?
Yeah.
I didn't suggest prohibition language. I would
I
like
think what
coordination.
legislative council is saying is that if you want to be prescriptive in a way that says, shall not do this.
Right, but I
Then it's
asked
clear
that.
cut, they shouldn't have been doing it.
Okay, I think we should probably go through the subcommittee charge.
And again, I'm just gonna make a pitch here that I would encourage you to think about whether you need amendments to the full commission's charge based
Yes.
on the charge you are giving to
Yeah,
the subcommittee.
and I'll probably come back with some proposals for everybody
Okay.
to narrow the focus of the commission.
Commission.
So where are we looking?
We are on page
No.
11.
Thank you.
Starting, there's no lines on this. So School District Boundary Subcommittee. There is created a subcommittee of the commission to be composed of the 5 non-voting members of the commission that shall determine the most efficient number of school districts and proposed boundary lines based on educational research, Vermont's landscape, and a comprehensive analysis of school locations, conditions, and capacity. That's the broad charge. The duties of the subcommittee are to recommend not more than 3 school district boundary options. I'm wondering if maybe we should wordsmith this to maybe be proposals, options, whatever. I just think we could be more eloquent here to the General Assembly.
A proposal, I think, is much better.
Proposal instead of options.
The proposed school district boundaries shall increase equitable access to educational opportunity, maximize opportunities for modern regional, middle, and high schools with the least disruption to students, provide for the education of their resident students by operating kindergarten through grade 12, provide access to CTE for all eligible students, to the extent practical, not separate towns within school districts as those boundaries exist on July 1, 2025. To the extent practical, consider the availability of regional services for students such as designated agencies and how those services would integrate into the new proposed school district boundaries. So then we're moving on, so that's what the boundaries, those are the criteria that the boundaries have to meet. Then the subcommittee may consider and make recommendations for the future placement of new schools, including CTE programs, to meet the requirements contained in subdivision 1, everything we just walked through. The subcommittee is required to engage and coordinate with the commission's public engagement subcommittee and the public engagement consultant to maximize public input and feedback regarding the development of the proposed new school district boundaries. The District Boundary Subcommittee shall have the assistance of the Agency of Digital Services Vermont Center for Geographic Information, which may also retain the services of one or more independent third parties to provide facilitation and mediation services to the subcommittee. I think this is all policy as to who's providing the assistance and whether or not a facilitator is necessary or needed, and then based on that policy decision, who would be the contracting entity and location of funds, et cetera.
Okay. thoughts, Representative Brady?
I think on B, I would propose we change that slightly for May, again, this is a May, they don't have to do this, so this is, we're not requiring. Recommendations for the future placement of new schools, I think I'm a little hung up on the word new, because we're talking also possibly
Renovation.
just the ideal placement of schools, so it might be consolidating existing schools, or so, like for the optimal location of schools, maybe I'm
Just get
in
out-
the weeds, but they're not just like, hey, it would be great if you built 20 new regional high
Yeah.
schools. Well, yeah, that would be great, but there's no money tree. Like, they aren't
Okay.
necessarily all new. It's where can you,
I was thinking.
Right.
maybe U32 in Montpelier, you know, where is there,
Is this what you're looking
I
for?
think that's an excellent
I mean,
point,
you
because you
could
might
say,
renovate
you could
existing.
be very specific and say recommendations
new.
for the consolidation of schools. That
was-
could be into a new school, or it
I
could
don't think
be,
you wanna put that word
We
in.
don't want.
I was thinking
Freaks
along the
people
same
out.
lines, and I think the first thing that she read was something like a statement with an emphasis upon maximizing potential future consolidations. In other words, right?
yeah, or Beth just changed it up there.
So this is
I
what
like-
this is what
I
it
like
currently
that.
this is what it currently says.
Yeah.
Future placement of new schools, and then based on what Rep Brady just said, we're looking at this
Yeah.
language, the
That-
optimal location of schools.
To me,
That's
that's
fine with
more
me.
broad.
Yeah.
I like
The
that.
fewer
better.
times the
Better.
word consolidation is
That's right.
in print.
Because we don't know.
Because there might be an existing
That's way too
facility
dry.
that just needs a little renovation.
When it is what it is.
Yes.
It was not opportunity.
And
It
yeah,
means
I don't
different
want,
things to people.
right, but we are saying it means this here, right? So I think that using it here for what it is completely adequate. If you have to explain what it is, then that's fine, but
I
I think we-
agree, I'm just,
I think we're trying to play wordsmithing for wordsmithing's sake as opposed to like having it, like it's there for a reason, it is what it is.
They don't have to be new.
right,
Good point.
most
They
of them
don't.
probably are gonna be.
Most of them
We'll
probably
be real lucky then, yeah.
Are we happy with this change for
I'm
now?
happy with it.
Yes,
For now.
please. Just broad, like, that would include consolidation without saying it, but
I disagree.
Come close.
I mean, I agree with what you're saying, but I disagree with the
just
fact that
put
we're
it in
gonna
there,
not
yeah.
put the word in because we don't wanna upset people and have a backlash. I think that's not a good quality.
Okay.
All right, so we do not have any language in here that talks about minimum, maximum number of districts.
Right.
Now, we provided guidelines to Ways and Means, and it seems to me we probably should echo those in this work. How we wordsmith that in, I'm not quite sure.
well,
What do you think between 5 and 10?
here's a
Yeah.
concrete
Of the
suggestion.
All right,
So where it says up to 3.
Which shall include.
No fewer than 10, no more than 24, those are the,
I don't know if
those are
I
the
wanna
edges
limit
of our
them.
ranges.
I use the
Or can we maybe
Oh,
use
yeah,
that,
yeah.
but say the Ways and Means Committee was given these two ranges, use that information to come up with 3 maps, because then you're giving them the 2 ranges and then
I
whatever's in the middle.
that language doesn't work, we need
No.
to be kind of specific as to.
Okay.
Anyway, Beth,
I'm a little concerned with limiting them and saying it has to be between 10 and 20 because we haven't done the work. As they do the work, what if 8 is the perfect number? What if they do the work and say, hey, it's not 10 to 20, it's
So-
8, or it's
so
30,
do
or
we
it's.
want an upper limit that is based on the 4,000 student
I don't-
research?
Well, that does sort of put in an upper limit.
Yeah.
So,
So we can,
we've already kind of put in a number.
so is that in there? That's what I was wondering, is that in there? Does it
No.
say-
No, you could, I would suggest
thought
that
we
you
had
put
that.
it in,
I thought we had it
We
too.
talked about it, but we didn't
Oh, I
talk
thought that
about
was
it.
under,
Go ahead, Josh.
Do we have an idea of when Ways and Means may have taken our information and be getting back to us with the numbers they recommend? Would it be before Friday?
No.
Okay. Because I was thinking if they did, then that could be actually inserted.
I mean, they don't see a foundation formula kicking in.
No, but if
For a while.
if they're working on the modeling, I actually know if they'd have the modeling if they're trying. Okay.
I thought we had, and I think that Rep. Taylor's probably gonna push for this, but in our list of meet the following, districts have a minimum of approximately 4,000 students to the extent practical. Because that's then gonna
That
put it
that
in.
provides our
upper
upper
limit.
limit.
I thought we said 39, whatever it was
Well,
exactly. I
that's
mean,
what-
we were referring to specific,
Right.
so I think we did.
Average, average
Some-
daily
I don't think
membership?
that's-
What term are we using?
Right. Right.
Then, yes, let's use ADM,
Okay,
not LTW ADM, just ADM.
so the districts need to have a minimum average daily membership of 4,000
As
students.
To the extent practical.
To extent practical.
Just so that particularly, like, if there's, in the Northeast Kingdom, like, it would cost a lot more or be harder than if you just had two that were of half that size, so. But generally, yes.
And I'm with Beth, I'm not sure I put a minimum.
I just don't wanna, because I haven't done the actual
Right,
mathematical
yeah.
research, I don't wanna tie them into a box that
Yeah.
doesn't make sense.
But I do think, if our goal is consolidation, I think an upper limit is probably important to the extent practical.
So that's.
To the extent practical, result in school districts with a minimum daily average membership of 4,000 students. Is that what you're looking for?
Or should we just use what the research keeps saying, 3,900?
That's what
I
you
don't
said
know if the
yesterday.
research that's the modeling number they use in APA.
Okay,
A difference of
That-
100,
that's a
it's a
different-
nice round number.
That's exactly what he said yesterday.
I mean, it's not like they're gonna say, right, they're not gonna, oh my God, that's, 3,999, we can't
Yeah.
use that district.
Right.
Would you put the word approximately in
Should
there?
we say, I'm sorry,
Do you want approximately?
or I was gonna say at
Yeah,
at
maybe
least, rather than,
Well, right.
or approximately.
Well, at least means
Minimum.
like if
That's
you're
it. I know.
at 3,995.
I know, so approximately,
To the extent practical covers that.
I think the approximately helps.
I think it does.
I think
I think it helps.
it's very clear.
Because some
To the extent
are-
possible,
might be
right, but they're
5,000.
gonna be, all right, well, it's 3855, that's the best we got over here.
I'm comfortable with that. You take out approximately, because we got to the extent.
What?
You just add.
I liked it.
You got her all
Oh,
on
I got
board.
it, we'll keep it,
You got
I think practically and to the extent possible, do two separate things.
I agree.
okay.
Would you like to spend time discussing those two weeks?
Nope.
No.
That was pretty
We're
good.
in the weeds
That
on
was
the
approximately.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, we've done a fair bit here.
Do you want to talk about what the deliverables are?
Yes.
Report and maps. We're on page 13. Again, this is all policy. You could not have a report and just have maps.
I don't think we.
You could just have a report, all policy. On or before December 1st, 2025, again, plug for me.
Mm-hmm.
That date is based on a committee bill, not an individual introducing a bill. Okay. The district boundary subcommittee shall submit a written report to the House and Senate committees on education with the subcommittee's proposed new school district boundaries. The report shall detail how each proposed option meets the requirements of subdivision 1 of this section. That's all the criteria that each school the options need to meet. So basically an explanation of how they got there.
Can I just ask a question?
Yes.
To both the House and the Senate?
It should be yes, should be to the General Assembly.
Because I notice it's in that, but not in the map part.
Is it? Oh, I just didn't put that in there.
So should they be reporting to both the House
Oh, absolutely.
and the Senate, or just General Assembly?
What do you like?
Generally speaking, we try and be as direct
Specific?
and
Okay.
specific as
Okay.
possible,
Okay.
but there are occasions where it really should be to the General Assembly.
Okay.
I would say.
This is your charge.
I just
All
wanted
right,
to
so
check on it.
here's what, we will be very broad here and say both education committees Ways and Means and
That's
Finance,
what I'm thinking, they,
and Government Ops in both.
Sorry, can I ask a dumb question? Again, newbie. But does that mean that we will be coming in instead of after our swearing, or no, not swearing, after the house is set, we're gonna come in next fall and have meetings for this
In January.
in January?
Yeah.
But this is December.
you'll get it.
That,
You'll
that's.
get it to look over.
Oh,
So we can
Yeah,
hit the
no, I mean,
ground
that's a
running on
perfectly legitimate
Could be,
question.
yeah.
If we're, yeah.
I'm just
We
wondering
are,
what
we
it
are
looks
still
like.
the committee, so
Yeah,
it'll be distributed us to see, but most importantly, it'll be available for us to hit the ground running.
but we do meet before the session starts again, like in the fall.
We don't.
We don't, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Just wondering.
No, great questions.
Get work.
Because it could happen, appropriations.
I will add those committee names, but in order to get them correct, I'm not gonna do it right here.
Okay,
Yeah, that's fine.
I've made a note, and I will also add that to the maps. That was a great catch there.
thank you.
On or before December 1st, 2025, the subcommittee shall also submit to all the same committees detailed maps for each school district boundary proposal, which in addition to the school district boundaries themselves shall include, again, this is all policy, and I took it from the School Explorer map. Average daily membership, member towns, location of public schools and the grades operated, 5-year facility condition index, PCV testing, and 10-year change in enrollment.
Should there be something in there around transportation and busing?
I think that's, I don't think that they would have the capacity to work that out. I think that's
It's
something
very
that
complicated.
either we or the new district boards, once they're operational, are gonna have to figure out.
But didn't we talk about the importance of not having kids on a bus for a really long time? And we didn't sort of put that up, I don't know if we put
I
it
think
up.
that comes with like the schools when we start sorting for that, because kids are still gonna live where they're gonna live, and districts are, their schools are gonna be where they are, kids will still be living where they are. So they're still gonna be on likely the same buses. I mean, it could change slightly, but I would.
Yeah, I would agree. I
As usual.
think that the job of the subcommittee is to draw boundaries. It is not changing anything about how things operate. Or saying, these kids go to this school, or whatever.
And if we're not breaking up district boundaries, is to the extent possible, as you said, we're not interfering with current bus routes and current transportation issues.
But we are asking them to take into consideration where schools are located,
Yes.
That's right.
which implies that, you know, that's gonna have an impact on them.
I think that goes along with the section on the potential placement of future schools.
I'm saying it has an impact on the, it is one of the criteria to have an impact on the boundaries of the new regions they're recommending. And geography is really important in all this, and living rurally, it means a lot to me that we're thinking about that, and that they are.
Do you wanna add something to the charge?
I would be hesitant to add something about transportation because I don't think this is going there yet.
Because we already talk about where schools are, right, in their regions, and
I
we're
mean-
talking about geography as part of the charge already.
You know, for all we know, they'll come back with larger districts and the General Assembly might say, well, we're gonna make them all SUs and everybody's gonna operate just the way they are. You know, we just don't know.
I would agree.
Yeah.
Transportation's very important, but I don't think it's this committee's job.
Because all they're
This
doing is
commission's
saying,
job.
here's the boundary.
Yeah.
If they're not saying anything about who goes to what school and how long the bus ride is.
I'm just gonna say, in some cases, it actually does matter whether a line is on one side of the boundary or another, and I know because I live and breathe it all the time, that's all
So
I'm
do
saying.
you want to add
I'm
something about?
not advocating for, transportation itself is not something I'm interested in adding into here for all the reasons stated.
That was really kind of question.
But transportation to me is slightly different than what I'm trying to say, and I want to make sure that we are being sensitive to rural areas that you know, it really does, I know.
Do you have a suggestion as to
No,
how
I mean,
to
this
sort of
just came
highlight
up and I
that?
haven't. I'll hold and if I come up with a suggestion, I will come up with one, but I just think it's issue.
You know, as I have said, this work is going to be both scientific and subjective. And I think that that's part of the reason why we want sort of the right people in the room to say, well, yes, the data says this, the reality of the rural location says that. Aaron, anything you want to add?
Don't wanna touch transportation. I think it's a lot more than maps. So how many bus drivers do you have? How many, like, it's just so much more complicated in our
Yeah, that wasn't what I was suggesting.
Chelsea,
Transportation
or,
is too-
what Amy said in Colchester, 100 years ago, when you were in Montpelier Elementary Schools.
95.
I'm
That was
kidding,
brutal.
just, but that you lived like a mile from the school and it was
Our bus ride.
Yeah.
I mean, it just, some of it is not as scientific. And in our labor market, it is much less scientific. It is about necessity and what's possible.
So folks, we need to start putting closure on things.
So that's a question, a process question to you and maybe all of us. As we go through these things, do we want to sort of straw poll the section and close it? Or are we gonna then keep chipping section, and then one big vote on the whole? I mean, obviously we will have to vote formally on the whole thing, but to try to keep things that we have done so we can move to the next thing, do we wanna just leave it as sort of, there's general consensus? Do we?
I guess I would vote for leaving it for general consensus, because I want people to have the option if they all of a sudden wake up in the middle of the night and say, oh my God, we
Okay.
never even
Okay.
took this into account. Just for everybody's understanding, what's been going through my head is, of course, this group needs to be resourced.
Yes.
And so the Commission on the Future of Public Education has a somewhat moving target budget that is, it started off with $200,000 that was assigned to the 2023 school construction task force. They did not spend anywhere near that. So then the leftover of that money, and let's call it $150,000, although I don't hold me to any of these numbers, was then moved to the Commission on the Future of Public Education. They have just signed a contract for about $95,000 with Afton Partners to do the public engagement. I am getting clarity as to how much might still be there, but if there is in the neighborhood of 25, 35, whatever it is, it seems to me that we are not appropriating any more money. The mechanism is already there to fund the work. I'm not sure what else. I'm happy to maybe talk with Beth offline as to how we make it, but all I'm saying is that there probably is money there. I have JFO looking into it, and it's already been appropriated to the commission, and this is a subcommittee of the commission.
And I have also asked JFO about other working group committees, things that have had an outside facilitator or help, that this happens all over the legislature all the time, that have been pretty productive of roughly what that cost may be, so that we're making an educated assumption about what they might need.
Sorry, can you just tell me what kinds of things that money is spent on? Is it like the commission, the experts that they ask? Is it paperwork?
It is spent for expenses such as they are, which don't tend to be very much.
But what are the expenses?
Most everybody on there isn't drawing the per diem, other than probably me and Ann Cummings. So we take that $50 a day that we get out of that.
Yeah.
In our mileage, but I'm not sure if that comes out of the legislative budget. But the big expense is hiring expertise.
Okay.
So, consultants basically. All right, I feel, and folks are ready, can talk to Chris, Aaron, and me, that we have reached some consensus here, and we will start moving on to other things. Period. And we'll take 5 back here right at 10 for our next set of witnesses.
You're fine.
And then we'll be on the floor at 10:30 for judicial retention hearing.
Okay.
Okay, folks, this is, what are we again? House Education, March 20th, 2025. Taking a little break from our education transformation work. This is Outright Vermont Youth Leadership Day. I have a nice opportunity to hear from some of the youth in Vermont, which we're always happy to have. I do not know what the testimony plan is, Dana. Do we have folks at home?
There are definitely folks here who know what it is. And
We would love to have whoever would like to testify first or and second sit right up front here and talk to us.
All right, you guys will randomly get to and then
Cool.
First and second.
yeah. So you can take the seats that feel right here.
Great. Welcome to the House Education Committee. We love hearing from young people in Vermont. I'm very happy to have you here. The floor is yours. If you just introduce yourselves, tell us where you're from, and then tell us what you have to say.
Hello, my name is Ren Parker. I use she, her pronouns. I'm from Hartford in Windsor County. Do I just keep going then? Sure. So I am a trans woman, and as I said, I use she, her pronouns. I am a 3-season varsity athlete. And for a long time, I thought my gender and the sports I loved playing were mutually exclusive. But thanks to a lot of work done by Vermont, I know that is no longer the case. Despite my confidence in my identity and my resolve to play sports, the sports I loved, I still faced backlash and was judged deeply for doing this. 2 years ago, I was the center of a lawsuit involving a snowboarding coach commenting on my gender identity. He sued the school and the state, claiming protections under freedom of speech and religious beliefs. He was backed by a designated hate group who funded his lawsuit, and they told his story every chance they had. He told a story of a respectful conversation that took place during a break-in competition about the physical advantages of males. His recollection of this story was very different from mine. I remember it like it was yesterday. The air was cold, the kind of cold that bites at your face. I was looking down at the boxes and rails from my perch atop the jump, my hype music playing as ideas of tricks flashed through my head. I remember the harsh screech of a megaphone ring out, 10 minutes till girls drop. Be ready on deck. Then I remember the crunch of Burton boots as my friend approached. They said, "Hey Ren, do you have a minute?" I could instantly see the concern on their face. My coach was talking and you came up. He said we have to compete extra hard today because a boy, pretending to be a girl, was trying to steal our win. My eyelids stung as I did my best to hold back tears. I watched his story unfold online and in my community, but my story was never told. I was the one who reported him to my coach. I reported him only because members of his team were gender non-conforming themselves. I was protecting them. I do not know about the comments that he made in the lodge, but I do know the comments I reported were made during competition. I never thought he would be fired. I never imagined a lawsuit. I never imagined members of my community could have so much hate. This pain and guilt was all consuming. I spent hours online. I read everything I could. I was obsessed with my own case. Then, just this past year, I was the varsity goalie for my girls' soccer team, where we won our first game in 2 years. To make this win even sweeter, it was against the very same school that had caused me so much mental anguish not 2 years earlier. I didn't find out until the next day, but members of the opposing team had made transphobic comments about me. In that moment, I was back atop the hill, trying my best not to cry. They said I was a 6'3" man who was ruining women's sports, or that I was sick in the head. Some went as far to say as I should have killed myself instead of playing soccer. But my team showed up in full support. A week later in a rematch, we wore ribbons in our hair the color of the trans flag, and I knew I was safe because my school and community was there with me. We were all in that together. My story could have ended in isolation, but instead it became a story of resilience, support, and the power of community. That is what we should be building, a Vermont where every student knows they belong. So I ask you to help protect us, protect trans students like me, protect our rights to play, to exist, and thrive. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Ren.
I am Izzy Hand. I use she, her pronouns. I am a senior at Blue Mountain Union School up in Wells River. And I'm here today to express the importance of LGBTQ plus organizations in schools. For a little background, I go to a pre-K through 12 school and there's about 400 kids there. So very, very small. And although our community is pretty tight-knit, our hallways still have a lot of homophobic language, and there's also just not a lot of education or knowledge around the LGBTQ plus community. Last year, I helped my school create a GSA, Gender Sexuality Alliance, which I'm now the president of. And since then, we have brought in multiple LGBTQ plus youth or LGBTQ plus organizations, some talking about harm reduction for LGBTQ plus youth specifically, and then Outright Vermont is also one of them. And since partnering with Outright, our staff has become more educated on LGBTQ plus language, pronouns, and also they've started speaking up more once they hear homophobic language happening to students or when they just hear it in general. And even though having them in our environment helps tremendously, there's still a ton of homophobic language going around in our schools, which with the recent anti-LGBTQ plus executive orders, I'm not sure if these organizations will even be allowed in schools to work with youth in the near future. So what I'm asking is to just have more LGBTQ plus organizations and knowledge and education in schools. As soon as we start destigmatizing it and making it a part of our actual everyday lives and a normal part of our everyday lives, I think the world will be more receptive to it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Are there others who are lined up to speak? I'm seeing a nod over there. Great.
Allie and Donna.
Welcome to you both. Welcome to House Education. We're very happy to hear from you. If you just introduce yourselves and tell us what you have to say.
My name is Allie. I use she, her pronouns, and I've been working at Umbrella in St. Johnsbury, Vermont. I've lived in Vermont my entire life, and I've gone to school here my entire life. And while going to school here, I have constantly witnessed disabled students, students with mental health issues, students a part of the LGBTQ community, students of color be faced with extra I'm sorry, you're all making me a little nervous. I'm not scary. I've seen them all be faced with a lot of hatred and a lot of harsh words, and I've noticed even teachers borderline bullying disabled students, and I think that it's really important, especially with Vermont being such a blue state, that we bring in some sort of diversity education to teach teachers about how we are all different, diverse people. We all have very different experiences and we all grow up very differently. And teachers have to foster relationships with all of these different students. They have to teach them, they have to show them how to grow, they have to assist them and help them with a lot of things. And I think it's very important that we have some sort of diversity training. And I think that you should all care too, because you're all very different, diverse people with come from different backgrounds. Maybe you all have kids who are in the school systems, and I think it's really important that your kids are kept safe just as much as my future kids and me and all the other students in Vermont.
Thank you very much.
Alright. My name is Donna. I use she, her pronouns. I am from White River Valley High School, and I am someone who is lucky enough to be proud of who I am and openly gay. But because of that, I receive a lot of bullying from my peers. And my school has ways of reporting this that various teachers have fought for. We have a HHB policy around this sort of thing, but it tends to be not very great at what it does. 2 years ago, when I was in 8th grade, there was this kid who was constantly saying very homophobic, very racist, even sexist things, just to multiple people. I had wanted to get this kid in trouble for a while, so I had started keeping notes about all the things that he was doing. And then after a while, I reported it to the administration and just told them that this kid was being openly hateful to a lot of different people. And so they started an investigation. And this kid, I had multiple different people who had also been targeted by this kid who were standing with me. And I was trying to tell them what was happening, but the school talked to me and said that the investigation that I started, that I was not allowed to talk to anyone about it, even though I was the one who started the investigation, which I found very annoying, but I, for the most part, listened. But after a while, they came back to me saying that they didn't see what the kid was doing to be considered bullying. They didn't give any reasons why. They didn't explain, like, if they were going to do anything, any punishment to him at all. But then they started to say that I was bullying him for reporting him for being racist, homophobic, and transphobic. And so the school started to get mad at me. And I got very upset. I talked with multiple different people, but nothing was changing. Luckily, they never actually started any investigation on me, but they told me that what I was doing could be considered bullying. And this story does not have a happy ending. That child is still in the school and is still not being a great person. And I would just like to change how our hazing, harassment, and bullying policy is so that there's not so much, I understand that confidentiality is important, but I wish to be able to know at least why things were dropped or why they decided that it wasn't good enough. And I would like to change that.
HHB policies and enforcement are very complicated stuff. You're absolutely right.
For sure.
It's hard on. It can be very hard on all parties.
Yeah.
Do we have more speaking? Great. So make sure we get everybody in the time that we have. Welcome.
I feel very fortunate to be in front of you all. And first off, I'd like to thank you all for being here and listening to us, and taking our opinions and our matters into consideration.
Would you mind just introducing yourself to us?
I am Ezra Woodward. I go to school at Blue Mountain Union in Wells River, and I'm part of the GSA there. Just for kind of a little background, I was homeschooled until grade 9, and so I feel fortunate that I was, able to be brought up in a way where there wasn't judgment or there wasn't discrimination. And I feel even more fortunate to go into a public school and feel supported by teachers. Just the people around me make me feel like I can actually function at school, and I don't know how I would be able to pursue my education and be myself in that environment without the people there to support me. And without those people, I feel that many children, and even many adults who work in the education, just everything, it would be awful for those people. And sorry, but yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And it's really nice to hear that you found a public school in Vermont that you find to be supportive and all of that. Yeah, thank you. I assume that's probably due in strong measure to much of the work of Outright Vermont in the school.
Yes.
Welcome.
Hey, my name's Arena. I am a junior at Colchester High School. I use she, her pronouns. I apologize for me looking at my phone.
That's fine.
Nope, don't.
I'm here today to shine light and advocate for myself and other voices who need to be heard. We are living in a time where education is scary, uncertain, and hostile. Policies at a federal level are being stripped away from marginalized students and teachers, silencing serious discussions and attempting to erase the stories and experiences of people who have every right to share them. This isn't about politics, it's about real people, real students, real futures. When schools fail to acknowledge the full spectrum of human experiences, when history is censored, when identities are dismissed, when there's lack of representation, we are creating a strong community where some thrive and succeed while others suffer and struggle. This isn't promising education, it's promising exclusion. As you continue to pass new bills, I can't urge you enough to remember it's your job to value the community and stand with those who are undervalued. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have maybe a couple minutes if there was anybody else who wanted to speak.
Round us out.
Thank you.
Maybe a couple minutes. That little red light you see flashing by the door.
Is that ready to flash?
Hi, I'm not a youth. My name is Sultana Khan. I use she, they pronouns. I'm from Randolph. My family moved here in 1998 from Washington, D.C., and I went to Randolph Union Middle School and high school. It was a time that was very different than it is now, but it feels very similar. When I moved to Randolph, the Take Back Vermont campaign was underway. And there was a barn down the street from my school that I saw every day that had a huge sign that said Take Back Vermont. And what that meant is that I did not come out until I left Vermont. And so I spent my entire high school and middle school career pretending to be someone that I was not. And I had to leave Vermont to find people who reflected my own experience back to me in ways that encouraged and supported me to be the person that I was. And when I think about that, I love Vermont. I'm back. But the fact that I had to leave to find support and freedom to be myself means that Vermont missed out on almost 15 years of my life. My money, my expertise, my connection to community. And so it's not just what Vermont and education opportunities can do for young people, it is also what we can do for Vermont if we are encouraged to stay here. So that's a thing that I feel strongly about. And I would also just say that when I was in high school, there were no programs to support LGBTQ plus students. And what we do know, what the evidence shows, is that GSAs in schools improve outcomes for all students. What we also know is that having even one teacher of color also improves academic outcomes and social-emotional outcomes for all students in schools. And so as we're thinking about representation and we're thinking about how we can support young people, I also want to just name that education reform is a thing that young people and teachers should be united in working together for. And involving youth leadership in that process is a really critical way to provide environments that support young people for who they are. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all for making the time to come in and visit with us. Really appreciate it. We're going to close quickly because we need to get to the floor for other business.
People say their voice. But the AOE has also utilized these numbers, and I would imagine that they've had very thoughtful discussions on this and didn't just pull them out because this report says it. That would be my thought.
I think that they've testified that they based their numbers on the Pike is on report, actually. And they were using, and they have been using those numbers in terms of calculating a foundation formula.
Right. So I would be basing my numbers off the Pike is out in report too, but I would still have had these discussions with all of you. That's what I mean. I think they have probably had discussions similar to what we're having about it and didn't just plop it out, plop it in.
I don't mean to, I don't want to try to speak for them. I don't know the answer to that. Just, I can only give you my recollection of testimony where they said, this is what the research shows based on the Pike is on report. Okay. I'm going to go Rob and Jana and Aaron.
I'll just say one thing about teacher effectiveness. You get too big, you start losing kids. Like, I'm not saying like having 10 kids in a class is great, it's terrible. But you start getting to 24, 25, and I know, like, for me as a teacher, like, knowing those kids, knowing how, everything that makes them tick, like, that's really important, and if you have 22 kids and like 5 of them are really energetic and squirrely, you run the risk of losing things. So I just want to just caution in terms of like, once you get too big, and I know what Aaron's saying about classroom size, because it seems like my classroom size was always, like, you were maximum capacity at 23, and you were stacking kids up after that. But we just want to make sure that if we're talking about students or we're talking about teaching, we just want to make sure that we don't let ourselves get too big. That's all I'm saying.
Janet was next, and Aaron, and then you, Leanne.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I think based on some of the feedback we've heard from the field, I would be a little nervous about assuming what went into AOE's sort of thinking behind their numbers without getting them back in here to offer testimony, which sort of goes back to, why I personally feel comfortable with the VSA numbers, just because they are Vermont educators speaking for the field, current state reality, so.
Aaron?
I just would echo some of that. I think, VSA had to go through a process with superintendents from across the state to arrive at these numbers and be able to put them on paper for us. So there is a process. And I hope we saw the email today, the VSBA endorsed it. This is huge. This is like a huge swath of public sentiment in Vermont that is agreeing to some really hard stuff and some big, big change. And so I want to be really careful about saying, thanks for coming really far. Now we're actually going to just come up with it on our own. And I'm like scanning the research that AOE gave us last year. I'm scanning I could move by 1 or 2 at the high school level. Again, these are minimums. Like, the classrooms are just not cookie cutters. It's going to depend on how many kids you have each year, lots of things. But I'm looking at national data that AOE sent us last year about actual averages in high schools across the country. And when I look at smaller states like ours, so Vermont is at about 14.7 as the average high school size classroom. New Hampshire is at 17. Wyoming, which is smaller than us, is at 18. Again, these are their average. It's not set in statute as a minimum, but this is their average. So I'm just trying to get a sense of where we fall. And the most are in the very low 20s. There are, a few. Again, these are their averages. In Utah, they have an average high school class size of 28. So I guess I will even say like 18 to 20 or something I could live with. But I am, in scanning the AOE research from last year, it seems like 25 comes up repeatedly in the research as being quite large. And to be fair, there are lots of classrooms of 25 at Colchester High School, and there are classrooms larger. There are many math classes at CVU that are larger than 25. So again, these are minimums, and some of these realities exist, but I'm gonna have a very hard time if we're gonna try to dictate anything higher than 20 at the secondary level.
Leanne, then Casey?
I just feel like I totally understand all the educational philosophy of why we're doing this and also the necessity. But I would be really negligent if I didn't speak up for some of the high schools in my area. Like I'm thinking Craftsbury Academy will never have 20 kids, and they're so adamant about trying to hang on to their school, and I don't know what to do for them. And so like I just, what is small by necessity versus small, and are we gonna exempt it, or are we gonna force those schools to eventually close, even though we're saying we're not necessarily talking about closing schools right now? They won't meet those numbers, and I don't know what to do. I don't know what my question is, right? I don't know what to do.
So just to speak to that concern of yours, I think we have envisioned this as basically an educational quality standard.
That's where it literally go.
That if you fail to meet, I mean, for the whole by necessity or by choice, small by necessity or small by choice, is probably something else we're going to have to assign to the State Board of Education, for example. We've had experience in this. The way I think we've been envisioning this is if you can't meet this 2 years in a row, you go before the State Board. And the State Board may look at you and say, of course you can't make it. You're a geographically isolated high school.
And maybe they'll get
Yeah. I mean, we can always bring up Canaan.
Yeah.
Canaan is as geographically isolated as you could possibly get. There's no way they're going to make these numbers. We have to have a system that makes allowances.
I don't know in a case like Craftsbury whether you could argue though that they're geographically isolated, because they're not that far from Peoples, they're not that far from Hazen.
That's right. That'll be up to a regulatory body that is us. But yes, I mean
But
that
they
is,
have also like loyal, like independence and town pride. I mean, I don't know how you measure that.
this is why our job is really hard this year, because we are stepping on all of these traditions and the whole idea of the school is the heart of our community. So that's very hard. Casey, sorry.
No, and I appreciate the discussion we're having. I think I just want to put a little, what do you call that? My little monologue in or whatever. I think we have to start thinking of the now and how we're doing things and start thinking of the future. And I think we're kind of stuck on this echo of like, hey, this is how we've done it. I'm not saying that's what we're doing right now. I'm saying I'm trying to think of going forward. And I'm looking at this, PICUS and the governor's proposal, and that's why I like their ratios versus class size minimums. So these are two different things. And I'm stuck on the 25 because I'm thinking that's their ratio. We have some of the smallest ratios in the country. We have the smallest ratio in the country of student teacher and staff to student. And I think we got to remember why we're here and why we're discussing the change of education. It's really expensive. And so I think we're trying to address that with this. To Aaron's point, I think it's really important that I would be fine with that 18 to 20. I think that pushing it up a little bit would be my goal with the 18 to 20. I understand like there is a difference between minimums and the ratios, and I think that's kind of where I'm stuck. So I'm listening to the conversation, and I would be fine with maybe looking at a 9 to 12 ratio and a pre-K to 8 or whatever. If you want to do 1 to 8, leave kindergarten alone. But like just getting back to like trying to make a decision. 18 to 20, I'd be completely fine with.
I don't think we can do a range.
No, I know. So like 20, I would push for 20.
And grade ranges?
High school.
High school.
High school for 20.
I appreciate that, and I'm personally going to warn us away from ratios, because we have to then define what is a teacher, what is another adult who's in that classroom.
And that's what I'm saying. Like I'm appreciating listening to this, and minimums versus the ratio, it can be very drastic off. So I would cede to something like that. If we were talking ratios, I would be pushing for it.
As I try to move this conversation along, I find myself saying, what's a number that we can all be happy with? And then I sort of push back at myself and say, well, that's not based on science and research, that's based on Everybody me wanting everybody to get along. Kate, then Emily.
I just want to maybe echo what Aaron was saying about the importance of the school board's stamp of approval on what the VSA said. There's a lot being said in the emails and in the press and really everywhere about folks' perception that may be correct, that they're going to lose some local control as the years progress out from here. The school boards are the local control. They're local elected volunteers. And for those folks to say, yes, we think VSA's got it right with those numbers, that is a big deal, like Aaron said. It's a very big deal. I think these types of decisions should be made by the people who are in the field. They should be made by educators who know what they're doing and what the landscape looks like here in Vermont. And we should not try to trump that in any fashion. And I might just go, I was just gonna say, these numbers are thoughtful. A lot of people are putting in a lot of work. And I'm here to stick with the 12, 15, 18.
Representative Long.
Yeah, I just wanted to add in I'm still where I was with the numbers, but I want to add in my thoughts around what happens when schools don't meet these numbers for minimum, and that's going to happen a lot. And I think we don't realize how much that might be happening in some of our most rural areas. And I can cite examples of schools that are actually trying to merge. And the only way they can merge because of their numbers is because they are planning on spending quite a significant amount of money on construction to either renovate a school, to you just can't take schools that don't meet the minimum and plunk them into another school, even if they're close enough to do it, without adding on a classroom or two and that sort of thing. I think with that, it's really important for people to understand what the impacts. It's not even just about what's best for kids and all. It's about what a community actually can afford too, because we don't have a construction aid program right now. And as much as I am celebrating the fact that we're still having that conversation, I don't know where the money's going to come from. And I do think that to me this feels pretty significant, and I've said this from day one, class size minimums, that is a significant decision we're making. That why I celebrate schools are doing it on their own in places, and I think that's wonderful. There's some that don't have the ability actually to do that right now. So this is making a significant move, and I see all of the work we're doing, and to Casey's point, I think it's really important for us to look down the road and see what our hopes are for the future, which is why I'm happy with the suggestion that this gets revisited, this class size minimum gets revisited, and I think that's good language to have in there. And I think it's smart as we move through a very significant transition and transformation for our education system in the state.
Is that a hand up?
I'm deciding.
Josh,
Yeah. I need to think through what I'm gonna say.
So I would be comfortable with these numbers, with the check back. And that the check back should include not just the financial, but the education quality piece. Because that's important that we see have there been opportunities increased, you know.
Figure out how to word something like that, a little challenging, but yeah.
You know,
You're-
because that's why we're doing this. It's not just about the money, it's about opportunities for kids.
This is where the solution comes, right here.
No,
Yes.
I know. So, you know, I like the check back, and I'm trying to come to agreement on the numbers. I would like to hire in the upper grades to the 20. But I do want to point out, getting away from this a little bit, that compromise needs to come from all sides, right? And right now, to me, it's starting to feel like some of us came to the table with an actual proposal, compromised on doing a strike all, compromised on putting the districts to a committee. Now we're compromising on the numbers. So I just want to kind of lay that out there for everybody, YouTube, everybody. That's starting to get the feeling, I'm starting to get that feeling.
Appreciate that. Yep. Thank you. Josh?
So, I guess I'm gonna say kind of what Chris did in the beginning for the first part. So I like the look back. I don't want my comment to be misconstrued. I just don't know that I have full faith that it's going to happen or happen with the rigor that it should. The numbers, I'm in 18, 20, so 1 through 8, 18, 9 through 12, 20, and that's on, I think, things we've heard from others, things I've read, which have been higher, and that's somewhere, taking data and research that has shown both and finding a medium. And I'm gonna read what I wrote, because I wrote this before Chris even said anything. So we're talking about compromise, right? So what I heard, and correct me if I'm wrong, Rep. Colin, you had mentioned that, we're compromised with the expedited timeline while using VSA's numbers. I don't see it as a compromise because we're using all of that. And is the compromise that you're giving that we may revisit in the future?
So I'm not looking at this as a transactional thing where we all have to give something. I'm just trying to get everybody comfortable in one area. And we may come up to a point where it's like, all right, we've hit loggerheads and we're going to have to straw poll it. I would like to find compromise where possible. Ultimately, we can vote on things. What I'm going to say is we're not going to decide this today. We're going to go home and think about it. If we go to big numbers, I would just tell you, I'm also looking for something that is politically palatable for the forces that are not us. Because if we say we want 25 kids in a high school class, we're going to need to have a day of testimony from the NEA and teachers telling us whether 25 works or doesn't. We're going to have facilities managers coming in and saying, due to the square footage rules that the AOE has for how many square feet per student, we can't accommodate classes that size in our school. So it's not about Republicans and Democrats, it's about all of the forces out there and finding a path forward through all of them. That is where I'm going. But I just want to acknowledge and appreciate what you both have said, and acknowledge and appreciate the level of discussion and compromise that has gone on as well. So anyway, let's see.
Yeah, this isn't gonna help, but I'm gonna, be the big bad meanie from the biggest district in the state and the biggest schools. And a real concern and frustration here is that the governor's plan and bill assumes things like 25 and these very significant numbers in a foundation formula. But best I understand, and quite a bit of modeling that's happened in the field, is there's also essentially no change to our footprint and to sort of the number of schools and the size of our classes and a support for that for quite a while. And right now it appears that comes at the expense of our largest districts. And so for my district, that would mean $20 million less. We are at or above these minimums. So at a certain point, I don't want to get into a urban-rural war, but it starts to feel like the cuts that if we're going to try to spend less overall but keep everything the same in the field, the places that are going to actually have some of the hardest time are already at scale and according to the foundation formula. And so there's just an extraordinary mismatch. And so the class size minimum piece is extremely appealing to me because it comes first from educational, and we've had so much testimony about the educational significance of having more closer to, they are still small, we are small, but closer to a better sound educational size classroom. And it's not just about dollars and cents, it's also about education and the kids and the teachers. It is still going to be very hard. I do not need to minimize that at all, but and to me it seems like, quite frank, I'm frustrated that I feel like that's a really missing piece in the governor's bill, and that there's this sort of presumption, one, that things will stay the same in the field for quite a while with a lot less money in some places, so that just doesn't quite work. That means huge cuts somewhere. And two, or it also means that we're just assuming these future boards that don't exist are gonna solve all this and make big hard decisions, and I see that as also us I see that as a kicking the can down the road in the governor's bill to be, so I find class size minimums to be a painful but educationally sound way of which we heard testimony last year, this year, and the amount of sort of education community, not just educators, that the SBA is representing school boards who've been in the thick of these hard decisions and struggled often to be able to operate class size minimums because of feedback in the community, to be a very important lever. And so if we can make progress on that, even if it's not quite as big as it maybe could be, some progress on that would be huge, and we'll hopefully have educational improvements.
Casey.
Mean CBSD.
Means CBSD. I appreciate that. I know that it's gonna be hard. No matter what we do, we're not gonna make 100% people happy in this, and I appreciate your viewpoint in saying that. I think it's really important to remember property taxes went up 20% last year. We're looking for an answer to this, and all I'm hearing from a lot of people that come in here, we're saying why we can't do something. I wanna say why we need to do something. I know there's a lot of tough things that are gonna have to happen, but 20% they went up last year. We bought down those rates to make it 0.8%. Another 6% increase this year. And I know that it's not just, there are other factors, healthcare. We haven't talked about that. And we're not gonna touch that. It's something we can't do. But this is a clear message that I'm just like, until it goes back to the compromise thing. Yeah, 18, I'll compromise to 20. I like 25, I'll go to 20, because I hear those concerns and I'm like, okay, so I'm willing to compromise on this. But I think we need to make bold decisions, and it's not gonna be popular all the time. It's not gonna be easy in the field all the time. I wanna give my kids I have a 4th grader, a 2nd grader, and a kid being born in July. I want them to have the best opportunities, and I want to give the schools the tools to exist. And I'm going to get off my soapbox here, and I'm gonna say like, I really appreciate all the thought in the communication and all the discussion we've had today, because I think it's been really good. But I really want to start making those decisions, and I do appreciate that. Does help when I hear things like that from large districts, small districts, and everyone in between.
If we want to talk sort of pure politics here, and I think this would be maybe we'll sort of wrap up, but there are going to be folks from each of our parties who come from different backgrounds who are probably going to want to chat about these class size minimums and the impact on them, and maybe we should take the overnight to sort of think about that. Are people, like, if we sort of wrap up here and say we're gonna come right back to it tomorrow, do we wanna push forward with, all right. I am going to reiterate, having watched other committees work on challenging issues in this area, how thankful I am for the level of discussion and decorum in here, and really appreciate it. So let us go forth on that message.
Go forth.
And lots of thinking, lots of talking, and we'll come back in refreshed tomorrow. And then we'll really go at it. All right,
We should all wear our school colors tomorrow.
A plug for Annie's assigned homework, for those of us who maybe failed to turn in the assignment, revisit the links that Annie sent.
Annie, would you just do a resend up to everybody?
I got it again. Someone mentioned about, I think it was you, Erin, about the SBA reached out to us.
Maybe it only went to chair. I don't know.
Oh, I got it. I didn't get it.
Sue Stoglaski was the sender.
I didn't get it. Would someone forward it to me? Is all I'm asking. Thank you.
I almost closed it, and then I was like,
I almost missed it too.
Let's close there.